Michael Meade is a renowned storyteller, as many of you probably know, author, and also a scholar of mythology, anthropology, and psychology.
In a way, what I want to do is reintroduce genius, in the sense that it was once better understood that the nature and purpose of education was to unveil and make more clear the genius in each person. And that was one of the essential roles of culture, was to bring out the genius qualities in each person. I'm putting out a different idea of the approaches of education, where the idea is not to get a career through life, but the idea is to awaken to the purpose one came to live. And that's already seated inside. This is my argument, but it's really the old argument of all cultures until modern times. The genius one's activity is connected to the stars. It's connected to a spark, and it wants to burn, and it wants to make, and it wants to create, and it has gifts to give. That's the nature of it. So once upon a time, once, not in this time, but in some other time, once before digital time, once when time still had a rhythm and you could be caught in it and you could roll with the flow of the world. Once in that time, there was a village, and in the village, there was a woman, and she was about to become a mother. And the way that she was going to become a mother was by giving birth to her first child. Genius refers to the spirit that's already there. That's the meaning of it. It's a Latin word, genius, but it really comes from North Africa, where it was pronounced genie. So sometimes it's called the guardian angel or the inner muse. In Africa, they call it the divine twin. It's the resident spirit of the soul present in each person, and it involves our own individual, unique way of seeing life. I want to repeat that. The genius in us involves our unique way of seeing life. William Stafford has that poem about, he calls it the muse. The muse is the feminine term, the genius is the masculine term. They're very similar. But he says in his poem, When I Met My Muse, he says at the end, or she says to him, I am your own way of seeing the world. As long as you look through my vision, everything in this world will be a kind of salvation for you. You can interpret from that, one of the ways to salvation, saving oneself from the usual disasters, one of the ways there is to be seeing the world in our own unique way. The notion of the genius, of the resident spirit inside each person, is connected to the idea that each person is unique and never will be repeated. The genius of each one of us is to be already uniquely ourselves. But the movement from childhood to becoming a fully awakened person is not a natural move simply. It requires some great changes to occur. And so the old idea was youth go on a walkabout. That's what they call it in the Australia Aboriginals call it. You go walkabout, because the world is trying to give you an awareness of your gifts and your genius. Notice his questions. Do I have something to give to the world? That's an essential question. People think young people are out to get stuff for themselves, but if you give them a chance, young people are the most altruistic people I've ever met. I don't care if they're rich or poor. When they have a chance to express and give, they become altruistic. There's something in us that knows we came here to give. The notion is the opposite of a consumer society. The consumer society says we came here to get, and we're going to consume everything there is. That's what mass culture is doing. But the old idea is we came here gifted, and culture is our way of giving. The general idea is not simply to have a career in life, it's to have a calling in life. That was the old idea. It was called vocation, to be called. Not to choose, but to be chosen by something greater than oneself. And what the calling is calling to is the genius that was in us from the very beginning. Am I making sense? Yes. That life isn't this accidental thing, and it's not this series of choices. Yes, we have to make choices, but it is much more meaningful in a person's life to be chosen, to be called, and the calling is trying to awaken the seed of genius already in there. Most education has been packing the same stuff into all the children or all the students, whereas the first function was to lead out their unique, genius, individual qualities and then instruct them in ways that make that enhanced. We have it backwards now. Instruction starts early in school and it continues through many college careers. It's instruction, putting stuff in, not bringing what's out. But failure is when the soul reminds us what we're here for. And it's not about simple outer achievement. It's about achieving a kind of an awakened state with what we already brought to the world. So in the soul's journey, in the walkabout, failure is valuable. Anyway, this second attempt, not to just get a life, but to get a full life and a life of awakened purpose and meaning, is called the second adventure. And it's connected to what I was talking about before as calling. That it's only when people do not know that each child is born that they are willing to leave more and more people in poverty. You know what I'm saying? The arguments happening in Washington, D.C. in the Congress over how money should be distributed and all that kind of stuff, those arguments are only supposed to occur after everybody has been fed. You know? They say you don't judge a culture by its achievement, you judge it by its weakest people. When a culture ignores infants because they don't realize that child that's not being fed, that could be easily fed, this is the richest culture in the world, may be the genius that could figure out how to save forests. You get what I'm saying? You feed them because they're going to give gifts once they grow. And to not understand that is to not be a real culture, because a real culture cultivates the gifts of its own people. So